are working. They are working on a piece of land that is owned by some other person. So to us, if you look at community participation and community work being used as casual laborers on their own land, it's a very big disaster, you know. So what are some of these plantations that we see happening in Africa? We have oil palm plantations that are happening all over. If you come to Uganda, we have Bidco. If you can't go to Kenya, the same. If you go to Nigeria, if you go to Ghana, oil palm plantations are a big problem. Cocoa in Ghana, in Nigeria, in all these countries. If you're talking about sugarcane plantations, they're in Uganda here, they are impoverished people. They have destroyed the environment. They have worked on the water bodies badly. And if you look at the local habitats, they have also been destroyed because of plantations of sugarcane. Then there are these ones of pine. We have eucalyptus. We have also carbon offset. If you are talking about reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, the RED program is also a disadvantage where communities, forests are taken charge of by the person who pays for the lease. And eventually, if you find the people like, you know, tenants on their own land, you know, they can't use the trees in the forests. They can't use even their land because the land is leased for a certain period of time. So those are some of the problem that we face. Of late, you were looking at the planting of trees for global benefit, and this is aimed at looking at addressing issues of climate change. Food production is also another challenge because the primary security of any household, of any family, is food. Without food, certainly they can't survive. Multi-billionaire and the corporate organizations have captured most of this land through land grabbing and land. So if one introduces like planting of trees for global benefit, in most countries like in Uganda, it is happening, then it becomes a very big disaster. They are planting in a radius of 7 meters, and when they cannot connect, certainly you find people meeting a challenge of having food because of less penetration of sunlight into the plants that are planted below the trees. You find that challenge of, you know, food production. And the only plantation that I loved was the one in Nigeria, which I looked at, the avocado plantation. Certainly, this was the food security aspect. At least that one, you can see that minus even getting the markets, can still go and look at the nutrition and address nutrition challenges in the communities. Then we also have plantations of cotton. And all these are not, you know, like communities can feed on. If you look at the picture that I've shared with you, is the oil palm. Look at it, look at the biodiversity below it. It's completely lost. You don't see any lion, you don't see any earthfly, you don't see any strangler, you don't see any parasite on it. Only standing, you know, palm oil trees and with their bare ground, nothing, no biodiversity. You see that there is no life in this forest. So this is the kind of promotion that Northerners are bringing here in the name of, you know, bringing these countries the middle income and take-off period. Now, if you look at some of the companies that are causing all this in our respective countries, in Ghana, we have FIFO oil palm. It also took a very big chunk of land. We have Benso oil palm plantation. We have companies in Nigeria like Okum oil palm. We have pear plantation. We have whole growing plantations. All these ones take a lot of land. And something that I found out is that in Nigeria, there is a plantation owners forum. And these ones are aimed at locating land and identifying where there is big chunks of land where oil palm can be grown. So, and other plantations. So that one was unique of its own. And I call upon my Nigerian friends who are in this meeting to better understand the motive of this. If you're talking about conservation and people are talking about monoculture, it turns out to be a challenge of some sort. So in Tanzania, in Mozambique, and in Uganda, we have one big company that has always been a challenge, and that is Green Resources, which is a carbon trading company that also addresses issues of aviation emissions. They get a lot of money from the carbon trading, but this money never trickles down to communities. We also have Bidco that has oil palm, which is both in Kenya and in Uganda. They took big chunks of land and they are working in an area which is a fragile ecosystem that is the basin for Lake Victoria, which serves as a riparian, which serves the river, which acts as a riparian river that serves across 10 countries. And if you look at Okumu being the second largest plantation in Nigeria and the largest crude oil producer, and the one that produces the domestic rubber market, really, you can imagine how many people that were displaced and how many people are employed in that particular farm as just casual laborers. Then I also a bit looked at Cameroon. Cameroon, if you look at its development sector, oil palm is one of the areas that in which communities get a lot of money and as a country. But the local, the smallholders control 70%. And most of their land is put to oil palm other than cultivation. So now, if you look at the productivity is actually very low. They produce 70%, but its productivity is very low, meaning that people are not satisfied with what they get from the oil palm. So if you look at companies that have been able to take over some of this land, like Soka Palm, which is a private company that owns 6 plantations with concessions in Cameroon, and of course, being located in 2 regions along the country's fertile coast. The fertile coast that would be growing food crops is now into oil palm, which oil palm certainly people may not feed the people. And it covers a very large area that is close to 6,000 hectares. And the entire villages are within the company's concession. To me, that this is where the challenge comes in. You have communities falling in a concession that belongs to a person that formed communities there, and they take the most fragile part of the land, and they are kind of compelled to grow oil palm for corporate benefit, not the community benefit. So this one turns out to be a challenge that comes with land grabbing, the violation of human rights, and of course the girl child, the women and children are the ones that suffer more. And if you look at the relationship between Soka Palm and the population that is inside the plantation, there is that now friction that is happening. The company thinks that the communities are stealing their fruits to make their own oil palm, palm oil. And that one brings in a challenge in terms of community survival, but also the sustainability of the plantation. If you look at Soka Palm's plantations, they are guarded by British security, and that's 4BS. So bringing the British security sometimes may not really work, as if there are no local farms that can do the protection. So if you look at job creation, if you look at violation, these companies that are brought from outside the country can better violate the rights of people because they are not in any way connected. And even if they hire, of course, he who pays the piper at the time is the tune. They'll be told exactly what to do, and they may do it to the satisfaction of the company. Hence, communities actually suffering at the expense of the establishment. If you look at the social mill in Bidombali plantation, which honors residents who are directly living alongside it against unauthorized access, and that is a challenge. First of all, the mill generates a very bad smell, which lingers over adjacent work camp, and residents complain of both the smell and pollution. So these are the associated challenges with plantations, that you have a mill which actually gives people sleepless nights, and which turns out to be a threat. So these are some of the challenges that are associated with plantations establishment. What could be some of the impacts of forests and communities? What are the impacts of plantations on forests and communities? The good thing is that as Comrade Kwame was opening, these are some of the things that he hinted on, and I'm happy also to echo them. that the establishment of plantations lead to degradation and destruction of natural forests, which leads to loss of biodiversity. Those are the habitats of fauna, which leads to loss of forest hubs on which some communities depend. And if you look at agriculture, agriculture is an important sector in any country because without food, communities cannot really survive. So 80% of agriculture requires sunshine and 20 is water. So now, if you look at the additional requirement for the local climate plays a very big role in agriculture, in rudimental agriculture. So the destruction of forests leads to destruction of the local climate, loss of food sovereignty, since forests are community food sources. If you lose the forest, communities lose the forest, certainly that is the one basket lost. And when some of these trees are cut and aliens are planted, it means that communities will lack certain building materials for those that would need a few building materials. And these developments and plantations have led to loss of sacred natural sites and territories in forest areas. And we know the potent sites that these sites have, they are very potent and they play a very big role in shaping community livelihoods. Certainly with plantation, they use a lot of chemicals which compromise the soil fertility because very many microbes die. And of course, you find soil becoming less powerful. Plantations also compromise water quality as well as availability. It is land grabbing. And because there is a lot of chemicals that are used, there's loss and death of pollinators. And pollinators are very, very important. Once pollinators disappear, then that's loss of biodiversity and the eventual multiplication of various species of trees will eventually stop. It is also to cultural erosion, because as plantations come, they come with people as in migrants, but also out migrants, as people that were endemic in the area, they move, and you have people coming in with different behavior, different ways of living, which actually causes kind of cultural erosion. And most of these ones have also caused internal, some kind of internally displaced communities. You find the communities are displaced within their own, they are internally kind of displaced because a lot of land has been taken, maybe in the case of my country, you have land, compared to land acquisition. And when you are given monetary compensation, you know, with the issues related with the money may disappear in a manner that one may not understand. And eventually you find a person internally displaced in form of a trading center in somebody's home, but they are within their environment, but certainly displaced. These plantations also cause climate change variation that eventually leads to climate change. And of course, this causes internal conflicts among the natives within the locality. And the pollution from agrochemicals and industrial pollution leads to health challenges of communities that live around those plantations. These are some of the conclusions and moving forward with the plantations. Climate change in Africa and world over is real, and it is propelled by anthropocentric activities, especially large industrial plantations and its related infrastructure. Pollution and high industrialized countries still think that Africa can be reduced to a carbon sink and source of raw materials for their polluting countries. The developed countries see Africa as a continent with idle land, and that indigenous knowledge in nature conservation is outdated and inappropriate. Community forest management and indigenous knowledge approaches are the fundamentals in conservation of nature, food sovereignty, and tackling issues of climate change. African governments need also to a bit rethink as a way forward of building strong economies at the expense of environment. This has happened. As long as a company comes in, it can do any establishment in any fragile ecosystem, as long as for them they're looking at GDP. It promotes, one of moving forward would be, we need to promote community ecological governance in this area of climate change. carbon trading is not a solution to climate change. The ultimate game changer for climate change impacts is reducing emissions from the source of production. The African government should stop further expansion of plantations as we strive to achieve 0.5 degrees centigrade as put in the Paris Accord. But also African government should also continue to plant indigenous species as opposed to aliens and encourage support communities to develop woodlots that can balance the fuel energy deficiencies. African governments should also invest more in conservation, and most African governments and corporations involved in monoculture development should also respect human rights and rule of law. It's high time, for those that are not doing it, it's high time they did. Ladies and gentlemen, this marks the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, David, for this brilliant presentation. We have learned the impacts of plantations on communities, livelihoods, and households. We'll come back to you for more questions, but now we want to give the floor to I will give the floor to John. Are you there?
Hello, Kwame.
Yes, John, you have the floor. Thank you for your.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Afternoon and evening, depending on the time zone that you are listening to me from. I'm happy to be here and to make a presentation on what drives plantations into Africa, a climate negotiation perspectives and response from the climate justice movement. Before I start, maybe Kwame, you can make me a host, a co-host, so that I can share the talking points that I have.
Yes, please go ahead. I think you can share your screen.
Okay. So let me try to share my screen. Okay, I hope you can all see my screen.
Yes, we can see.
Oh, okay, so I'm going to be very brief and straight to the point with this presentation. I will present some slides and use the remaining minutes to discuss around the slides. So as I earlier said, I'm going to be presenting on what drives plantations into Africa, a climate negotiation perspectives and response from climate justice movement. So I am sure all of us know what a plantation is. It is not a new term, a new terminology to all of us. But in case you are not sure what plantations are, they are a single crop or trees grown on a large area of land. And the crops grown on plantations are usually cash crops, meaning that they are sold on the global market for a high price. You have examples of crops that are usually grown in a plantation, such as coffee, tea, sugarcane, cashew, rubber, banana, and cotton. So the question that we may want to ask ourselves is, are there socio-economic and environmental implications of plantations? And it's true that plantations, because what is planted is mostly cash crops. It's true that provides, or trees planted in a plantation are used for export. They are exported and cash is gotten from that. So that is not in that if you have a plantation. But another thing that is also not in that is that plantations affect the biological diversity of the ecosystem. Because before you put up a plantation, plantations are not natural. I have not seen a natural plantation. I've seen natural forests, but I have not seen natural plantations because people who develop plantations are intentional on the kind of trees or the kind of crops that they want in that plantation, depending on what market they are targeting. So plantation is purely for the purpose of market to make profit out of the cash crops that you want to export or you want to produce and sell. And because plantations are not natural, you have to clear a vegetation, a natural vegetation before you develop your plantation. If you want to have a banana plantation or a palm plantation, you are definitely going to clear the natural vegetation before you put them up. And clearing that means it is going to distort the natural balance of biological diversity in that area. So since they are not natural, plantations affect biological diversity. And not only does plantations affect biological diversity, plantations also encourage emission. So my topic is a climate change negotiation perspective, and that is where I'm going to center on. So once you clear an area of natural vegetation, it means you have created a condition where the greenhouse gases, the carbon specifically, that has been held in the natural vegetation will be released into the atmosphere, especially if it is cleared and burnt. Even if it's not cleared and burnt, the carbon that you have in the vegetation there will find its way out of where it was sunk, affecting the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. I've been logged out.
No, you're here.
No?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Can you share that? Okay, that's good.
Okay. Can you all see my slide?
Yes, but it's not moving. It's not moving. It's just in what drives plantations into Africa, climate negotiation. That's where it's not been moving. It's just station. Okay, yeah, it's moving now.
Okay. So yeah, I've talked about what plantations are, how they are a single crop or a single tree grown on a large area, and how these crops or trees are mostly cash crops and they are grown for export. They are grown so that the owner of the plantation is going to make money out of that. And then how can we relate plantations that we have, which most of them are found in the tropics, especially on the tropical regions like Africa, where you have a lot of palm plantations, cocoa plantations, plantations of different kinds of trees, which aim majorly to export and make money. how can you relate this to the climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts? Now, why climate change mitigation, genuine climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts aim to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that is emitted, or to increase the sink of greenhouse gases by natural vegetation, by encouraging preservation of natural forests and implementation of actions that will reduce emission of greenhouse gases and enhance their sinks. Plantations, on the one hand, do not encourage reduction or sink of greenhouse gases, because if it does, it will not have cleared natural vegetation that were holding carbon in them in the first place for monoculture crops or monoculture trees to be planted on a very large area, which if you are thinking logically in terms of climate change mitigation and adaptation, trees planted now may take some time to grow before they begin to sink in carbon. But trees or vegetation that is already in place already have absorbed some level of carbon in them, and by clearing them does no good to climate change mitigation efforts. That is to tell you that plantations are not intended to address the climate change crisis. Rather, plantations are put up mostly by big corporations whose interest is to make money out of their conventional agriculture. And that is the more reason why the issue of plantation has to be discouraged in Africa, because plantations are encouraging the releases of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere rather than encouraging their sink. If you look at conventional agriculture, even though many of them preach the kind of efforts that they put in place to address climate change, to mitigate climate change, the reality is that that's not what they are actually doing. What they are actually doing is to make gains from the plantations they have put in place, and not necessarily to address climate change. Because it is obvious how plantations distort the biological diversity that are existing in an area, that are playing critical roles in environmental preservation, that are playing a critical role in providing ecosystem services, which the plantations come to distort. So if we talk about plantations and look at the climate change negotiation perspective, which aims to reduce, like the Paris Agreement says, to reduce the global average temperature to below 2 degrees Celsius to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we can say plantations are not working towards realizing this goal of the Paris Agreement. Any agricultural system that is working towards realizing the goal of the Paris Agreement will not clear the natural vegetation to be replaced by artificial vegetation. Rather, the natural vegetation ought to be conserved so that they continue to house the carbon they have in them, rather than clearing them to release them into the atmosphere. And that is why we always query some of the solutions proposed by different organizations, especially multinational organizations, as solutions to climate change. one of which is the red clause, which encourages preservation of forests, which is good. But then when you conserve a forest and go ahead to sell what you have conserved so that another company or another country emits, the solution becomes not sustainable. But preservation of forests in itself is good, but when it is preserved and traded, it is as good as preservation has not taken place at all. And that is why plantation should be discouraged. All the drivers of plantation, which is purely profit, should be discouraged because it is not contributing to the efforts of addressing climate change. Rather, it is contributing to the goal of those who are promoting plantations of making profit and not necessarily preserving the environment, preserving the cultural site, preserving the biological diversity, which serves as a source of food, as a source of medicine for health, especially in Africa, as a source of some spiritual practices of the African people, or a home for some indigenous populations in Africa, but it's rather pursuing purely the profit angle of those who promote it. So basically, that's what I want to share about plantation and how it does not contribute to climate change mitigation efforts, how it is purely about profit. This is so straightforward. That is why I did not put up a lot of slides so that I discuss around this and you get to see clearly how plantations are not helping Africa in terms of conserving their environment, conserving their cultural heritage, but basically achieving the goal of those who promote them, who are mainly big corporations that about profit and not about the health of Mother Earth. So I'm going to pause here to receive contributions or questions as the case may be. Thank you again, Kwame and the Africa Biomass Group for this opportunity to share my thoughts on this topic.
Thank you very much, John, for your presentation, your brilliant presentation. We heard from David, and from David's presentation, it is clear that plantation is all over Africa. He noted plantations in Cameroon, plantations in Ghana, in Uganda, in Tanzania, in Liberia. It's everywhere in Africa, and it has a huge impact, not only on environment, on our biodiversity, but also on communities and their livelihoods. Then John presented the profit aspects of plantations, what drives the climate and what drives actually the expansion of plantations in Africa. So multinationals are trying just to make profits. So they are trying to conserve forests, and they are creating some spaces they call forests, but plantations are not forests. So it's very important to continue discussing this and demystify the role of multinationals in expanding plantations in Africa. So having that said, I would love to throw the ball to you all for your questions, your comments, and your reflections around the issues of plantations. So Dear participants, you have the floor for your questions. I don't know if Salome is here. I can't see Salome. Salome was supposed to present on the gendered impacts of plantations, but she's not here. So we will continue with the debate or discussion on the two presentations that we already had. Thank you. You have the floor for your comments, your questions, your reflections. I can't see any hands, but I know Philippe is here. Elvis also is here. Felicia, I can see you. Elvis, yes, please, you have the floor.
Okay, so my name is Elvis, and thank you to the presenters for that insightful presentation. Mine is just two quick comments. The first one boils down to the issue around the plantation that the first presenter mentioned. So in Ghana, in Ghana, there are a lot of different kinds of plantations. Some are being owned by investors outside the country. So when you go to the oil palm, the rubber, as you did mention, so those one have a huge community implication and negative impact, as it has been stated. But in the cocoa sector, in Ghana is quite an interesting scenario. So in Ghana, most of these cocoa plantation or the cocoa that we have are being owned by small farm holders, and they are not in that huge tract in the form of plantation. So you have a farmer who have maybe 4 acres, 3 acres, then another one will have maybe 6 acres or 10 acres. So they are in small acres and it's being owned by individual farmers. So in that sense, they don't have that community rights issue that we normally associate them with plantation. Yes, you do have problems with deforestation because most communities also want to, or individuals want to expand into the forest reserve where they think have a very good land, mineral resources for them to grow their crops. So for me, that's the clarification I want to state. Yes, when you go to the oil, when you go to the rubber, when you go to the eucalyptus and other forms of plantation, you have a huge community issue. But when it goes to the cocoa, mostly it's being driven by individual farmers. Maybe that should be also as a lesson. When we want to do exploration projects, or when we want to do plantation by investing, why don't we adopt they call it off-sourcing. So you give it to communities who grow those crops on their own land in small pieces, 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acres. Then you buy it from them. In that sense, it reduces the conflict between investors and communities. In that sense, communities also have a very bigger say in what their lands are being used for, as compared to whereby investors comes, connive with government and traditional authorities and acquire huge tracts of land from communities without paying proper compensation. And they use the land which are not in line with the culture and the belief systems of the community. So that's the first point that I want to raise. The second one is the issue around politics in this climate change discussion. I always state this, that sometimes we forget the reason why as a people or as a group, we are even talking about this climate change issue in the first place. The basic fundamental thing that I always mention is the reason why we are all discussing climate change is to reduce poverty, because if you don't address a phenomenon, people will suffer. If you don't address a phenomenon, the majority of people from developing countries or developed countries can't survive. But here's the case, the solution that we are proposing are actually worsening the plight of people. So we are trying to plant trees to absorb carbon so that people will have a comfortable life. But we are forgetting that the kind of trees that you are planting are actually sending people deeper into the poverty line. So for me, when we are having this discussion at the international stage, like John John said, we need to let people understand the very reason why we are trying to address the issue of climate change is because we want to reduce poverty. And we cannot propose initiatives that will worsen people's poverty in the name of addressing climate change. Yeah. So these are the two quick points that I want to add.
Thank you. Thank you, Elvis, for your comments. They are very relevant. And I think we need to push back the plantations in Africa because it destroys the poor people communities. Thank you so much. Philip, you have the floor.
Yes, good afternoon to you all, and nice to be with you, and thanks for organizing this to celebrate the 21st of September, International Day of Action. And I mean, particularly here in Africa, it's so important that this kind of awareness is being created regards the impacts that these timber plantations exert on communities and the landscape. I mean, where I live, which is in a rural area of Mpumalanga province, South Africa, we can see incredible biodiversity impoverishment. We can see accelerated soil erosion. We can see incredible river degradation and flash flooding, which we never saw in the old days. And this has got nothing to do with climate change. It's got to do only with bad land stewardship and the way that nature has been replaced with these large-scale monoculture timber plantations. So, of course, naturally, the ecosystems have a, because of its diversity, have a resilience, and many services like water retention. Grasslands locally are famous for its water retention service. And if you destroy the grassland, of course, you lose out that service. So, yeah, and then just another point that I wanted to make about the impact of fire in plantations, because plantations are managed for maximum amount of biomass. That's what the timber industry want from that piece of land, maximum biomass extraction. And of course, if there's a fire, the fire is so much more intense because of so much more biomass in that plantation compartment than would naturally exist in a forest or in a grassland. My last point on this International Day of Action, the Biomass Working Group has released a statement where, amongst other things, we call on the complete ban on the further propagation of invasive alien trees. Eucalyptus, pines, and wattle are the trees that particularly are being mentioned. So yes, and I just wanted to mention that, and I thank you again for the opportunity, and yeah, I look forward to the rest of the discussion, and thanks a lot for the presentations.
Thank you, Philip, for your comments. Yes, as I said, plantations are everywhere in Africa. I remember in Nigeria, Okumu palm oil plantation, last year, I think it was last year or the beginning of this year, there was a community protest. And from that community protest, the palm oil company shoots. I should say the women from community were protesting, and there was a shooting, and one of the community member was injured. And it brings the discussion on human rights issues. I think it's very, very important to look at that aspect as well, because as we are fighting that neocolonialism system, the system is fighting back as well. So it's very important to look at the way the plantations are not only affecting the environment, but it's affecting or destroying the legal system. And the companies are taking over the government. They have been taken hostage. Our governments have been taken hostage by the multinational companies. So that's very critical for us to raise more awareness for our community members to understand why we are fighting, and also for our government to understand our position. We don't want any multinational come and destroy our livelihoods and destroy our environment and kill us, arrest us for our rights. I think we need to continue fighting. That's not, it's not acceptable what they are doing. So thank you all for your comments. I don't have any hands, but I would like to give the floor to David and John for maybe comments on some of the reflections that Elvis and Philip put forward. David, are you there? Do you have any reflections? Thank you.
But from the presentations made by, and the contributions made by members, much more for supplements. And did he ask a question on plantations? I don't remember, but he was talking about the number of, corporations coming in. I lost some network somewhere. Maybe from if there are some pertinent issue that he could have picked out, then I didn't want interrupt the presentation, but somehow I lost I got the disconnection somewhere.
Yeah, Elvis and Philip, they put forward some reflections on the plantations, where Philip said what's happening in South Africa as well, where water is polluted because of plantations. And Elvis also point out that we need to particularly look at why we are fighting climate. At the first place, we fighting climate because we want to restore the small economy of people, because climate change is affecting the livelihood of people. But then if they are trying to resolve the climate change and they put forward some solutions that badly impact or doubly impacts the communities, that's not fair. So we are right to continue fighting the plantations. Yeah, so those are the reflections. I want you also to see if you can have a comment on those things. If not, we can still go to John as well. John, did you hear the comments from Philip and Elvis? Do you have any additional comment to that? Or if not, please, participants, if you have more questions to throw, you are welcome. Yes, John.
Okay, thank you, Kwame. Yes, I listened to the contributions from Philip and Elvis, and yes, the contributions were very valid. As you also had said, that plantations, when we are talking about plantations, it is also a human rights issue, because we have a right to a clean and sustainable environment. That is a human right that has to be guaranteed. And if these plantations are denying the people from enjoying that right to a safe and clean environment, then there is a problem. We will not be talking about the issue of environmental degradation alone. We'll also be talking about the issue of human rights of the people, which are being violated by this big corporation. I was in Benin in southern parts of Nigeria last year, there was an event organized by HOMEP, head of Mother Earth Foundation, when we had farmers trained on agroecological practices. So there was a woman from one of the communities who shared the experience of what land grabbing for plantations have done to their community. And what she said was that because the multinationals were coming with money to buy up the land belonging to the community, because of the huge amount that were offered, many community members willingly sold their land. So almost half, if not more, of the community have been bought, because almost every land has been bought apart from the land hosting their residential houses with maybe a little space at the backyard to farm vegetables. Apart from that, the real farmland, the large chunk of the farmland have been bought by the corporation. And what did they do after they bought this land? They put a fence around it, clear the land of vegetation and the forest where the community women used to go to get firewood for cooking. And now that whole community has no place to go within the community to get firewood. If they want to get firewood, they have to cross over to another community, which is another source of forest and fight over firewood, because where they're going to get the farmland, they are going to get this firewood from, belongs to someone from another different community who is also in need of that firewood for their cooking needs. So it became a challenge for the community after they were enticed to sell their land, which they do not have access to. So this corporation does not even care to say that, okay, let's see, allow some vegetation to stand from where the community members can access for their firewood and for their other needs. But they fence everything and clear the natural vegetation and have put up the kind of plantations that they want. So yeah, even though you can say that the community voluntarily sold their land, it is not consent to me, if you ask. There was no prior and informed consent. Even if there was consent, the consent was not an informed. The deal was entered into not from an informed perspective from the community members, and that is a breach of human rights. So it was not clear to the community if selling this land means they will not have any access to benefit of any vegetation from that land or from other resources which they used to enjoy. But now this is what the community is experiencing. So yes, I agree that the issue of plantation or of land grabbing is no longer only an issue of environmental degradation, which the plantations and other uses that they put the land they grab to cause, but also on the issues of rights, because the cultural rights of the people are trampled upon when this land are grabbed. The economic rights of people are also trampled upon when these lands are grabbed. So it is something that we really need to rethink and to especially engage our government, which puts together policies that make it easy for these lands to be grabbed from multinational corporations. Because when they come into any country, they first go through the government, which approve of their acquiring this land, and also encourage the community or persuade the community to give up this land, not knowing the ancestral attachment people have to the land or other benefits they derive from the land, which will no longer be there by the time these lands are grabbed. So it's a much more deeper issue than environmental issue, but an economic issue, a cultural issue, a social and a spiritual issue. And that's the more reason why it's also a health issue. It's also a food issue because once these lands are grabbed and the forests are taken down, the kinds of food that people used to get from this forest and have their cultural food the way they want it will no longer be available. So the food that will be available to them will no longer be culturally appropriate, socially appropriate. So it's more than an environmental issue, but a social, cultural, economic, health, and a food issue.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John, for elaborating on this. I see Shitira, your hand up, and I also see Salome entering the room. Shitira, do you have any question?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kwame. And thank you to all the speakers today. This was a really, really interesting series of talks for me to attend, particularly because this has been an issue that I just want to offer a perspective from India, because so many of the things that I heard today are so familiar and so painful to hear that these things are happening in countries in Africa as well, because this has really been a struggle that we've been, the struggle has been going on for decades, even in India, especially in the state of Kerala, where I'm from, but really all over. And one of the interesting things about this is that here in India, we actually have a really great law called the Forest Rights Act. And the Forest Rights Act actually recognizes women as equal rights holders to resources. It recognizes them as joint title holders, and they're equal members of decision-making bodies at the local level and so on. So it's a fantastic law, and it's been really helpful overall. But what we've been seeing are that, of course, industry, like corporate plantations, as well as compulsory afforestation programs, have been sort of thwarting the FRA. It's been taking away the powers of a really great law that we have and really making it ineffective. So even when the legal system, even when there are structures built into the legal system to prevent, to prevent women's rights being further eroded as a result of things like plantations, we see that it is actually still happening. And the only places where we have seen the state be willing to reconsider the idea of plantations have been in regions where we've had massive ecological disasters. When we've seen landslides in plantations, when we have lost we've lost thousands of hectares of monoculture plantations to severe flooding, all of these things which could have been prevented, or at least the impacts of which could have been lessened if there had been real forests in the area. When massive ecological disasters like this happen, then we see that the government is willing to reconsider bringing another plantation in. But it's really tragic that it takes something like that for them to start reconsidering these incredibly environmentally harmful projects. So I just wanted to hear from you all whether you've had better success in countries in Africa, what are some strategies that have worked? Are there any success stories which have really which stand out to you in terms of how a change is there a shift really in terms of when it comes to plantations?
Thank you very much, Shetira, for that question. Yes, David, John, do you have any response to Shetira? And Salome, if you also have some response, is there any change? Do we have any examples of fights against plantations that bring any change? Please, you have the floor. David, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Kwame. I think the fights have been on. I'll give an example of my country, Uganda, where we into oil and gas mining in the oil region. And of course, Bugoma forest, one of those important natural forests, were cut down by sugarcane plantation, that is Hoima sugar. But the fight is on. Part of it has gone, but we have at least resurrected. We have rescued part of it. And demarcations are now taking root. We want to know where the forest starts and ends. And that fight is still on, not also in Kalangala for oil palm and in Bugoma, in Bufuma. We have tried, but government is a very big elephant. We keep talking, but eventually you reduce on the impact. Somehow the impacts are reduced, but I cannot say we have had very successful struggles where we have completely stopped the company. Only way back in, this was 2007, when we fought the government and the company, and they were not able to take Mavida Forest. At least if you could get maybe from other countries, from Cameroon, Nigeria, Ghana, if you could have some examples of what is happening on ground. But there was, and the fights are still on, but government, our African governments are a little corrupt somehow. So the investor has more power than even the government itself. That's what I can say.
Thank you, David. Yes, Elvis, you have the floor.
Also, just an example I would like to share. So there's this company which came into Ghana to do eucalyptus plantation. So he first went to an area in Ghana, somewhere in the eastern part of Ghana. And the chief and the queen mother, so in Ghana, most of the lands are owned by the people, but they are vested in their traditional chiefs, their local chiefs on their behalf. So he acquired the land from the traditional chiefs to do his eucalyptus plantation. But his subjects, the chief subjects, sued their chief. And the reason for suing their chief is the chief is not administering the land in their best interest. So they are seeking the law to revoke their license. And we all know, even though the case was still in court, but you all know companies usually don't like this kind of negative publication and litigation. So because of the back and forth legal issues and legal tussles, company just left that particular area and he went to another area, and in that area, the chiefs and his people gave their lands to them. And there was no one from those particular areas to take those legal actions. So they succeeded in acquiring the land in that part of the country. So a certain company in one area he failed because people use the legal system. And you all know, but by the end of the day, it's possible the chief could have won the case and he would have easily have the land. But companies don't like these litigations and those negative publications. So because of that, they easily left the so that's one example I'll share.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Elvis. Salome, you have the floor.
Yes. Good afternoon. Good morning from my end here. We're talking about fight from communities to claim their land, right? Sorry, I joined late because of the time difference. I didn't know.
Yes.
Is that what we are talking about? Okay, so
yes.
just to give an example of, I think there's fight going on everywhere. Communities are resisting land grab. in all the countries. From the research that I did for the presentation, here, there's fight going on everywhere. But just to give an example of another fight in Liberia, there's a community in Nima where we have 2 iron ore mining companies. And this community, their land was divided, and portion of the land was given to the mining company, and portion of the land is also established as a protected area, that is around the East Nima Nature Reserve. And then the concession agreement was such that there was no demarcation. It was left open, at the advantage of the concessionaire, the company. So wherever they explored and they saw new resource, they expand, whether it was in a community, whether it was in a community forest, So in 2021, even though the conflict had been going on from time to time for 2021, when there was a plan to review the contract, the community resisted, because most of them had their farmland that were already taken, and the company said they were doing some resettlement package, which was not even sufficient. It was not sustainable. There was no strategy. They just went and gave money to people, and the cash they gave to the people was not even enough. And people took the cash and bought motorbike. Imagine if you had a cocoa farm that you survived on for the rest of your life, and the company came and gave you $500 for your cocoa farm, and then you eat that $500 for just maybe in a couple of weeks, the money is gone. And then when that happens, then the community realized that they needed their land more than the money. So it was a heated conflict. The community went to the extent of putting their traditional, in Liberia, we call it the traditional devil, like the poorer society. They had to put the poorer devil outside, where they went and took what they mined and the mining site, and then they drove the companies from there. They burned companies' properties and all of that. But what is so sad about the whole situation is that the government is always on the side of the company. That is the frustrating thing. I think this is happening in every part of Africa or West Africa, where expansion of plantation is going on. So communities that oppose company, the government see them as enemies, to development. So just to give an example, and the cases, all over. We had the Kidman, the Mano plantation. Well, we had the Saint David plantation now, the Mano plantation, where they took all the people land. They don't have place to farm. Some of the communities even remain in the middle of the palm farm, and to have access to their own community, they have to go through security screening and all of that, searching people's stuff and things. So a lot of conflicts are going on, and I really see it as a potential security threat for the sub-region. Because communities are angry, and then the demand for oil is also increasing, the expansion. So we're going to see a lot of conflict, and I think that it's a security threat for West Africa, if not Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Salome. I'm looking at the time, and I just want to ask if people still have 5 minutes to go. If not, we'll close the webinar. Please indicate if you still have 5 minutes, so Salome can just tell us some of the important impacts of the plantations on women.
The importance?
Impacts of plantations.
Oh, okay.
The
yeah,
key
so I think I would not. I also sorry for this. So let me just go strictly to the impact of the plantation. So the major impact right now is the increase in land grab has limited access to land for women. And where the plantations are taking place are indigenous communities that depend on forest, for food production. And that is a source of income from the forest resources. They harvest their NTFE and other forest products, medicine and what have you. So land grab has taken away the access of community to these resources. And then it also increased the land conflict, just as what we are going back to what we were talking about. The land conflicts are increased around the region. Communities are fighting back. There's a lot of protests going on. Somebody protests. Am I protected?
No, please go ahead.
And some of the protests, are daily. Sometimes, most people lost their life, and women are victimized by that. Women are the ones who really face the burden. Women and children are the ones who face the burden. And we also say that the companies prioritize employment of men, people who have they feel they have the physical strength to do their work because the job is tough. So there is no alternative for women to kind of generate income because they are not being prioritized by the employment or the employer. So sometimes they give them job, but the job is temporary. And then in some places, women have to be placed under their husband or their spouses to be able to generate something. And then the labor is intensive, like I said. So pregnant women and other lactating mothers, they have to travel distances on the palm farm if they are doing like picking under the palm or doing other labor under the palm. Like for example, in Nigeria, they talk about where some pregnant women even have complications during birth, and some women lost their life. So the other issue had to do with the exposure to the chemicals and the hazardous work that women are doing. Women are the one, they consider the application of fertilizer as the easier job that women are supposed to do. So, but the threat is that they are not giving any, safety support to women. Women are not trained on how to handle the fertilizer. They are not giving any safety devices like masks and what have you, protective gear for them to wear. So that is happening everywhere. It's happening in Liberia, it's in Nigeria, and it's in most of the countries where expansion is ongoing. And excuse me, guys. And women are also excluded from decision making. Decision about how the plantation even come in a community, whether women have a stake in the land, even though women are the one producing the highest involved in agricultural production, and they mostly survive on the land. They are the one breaking wood. They are the one responsible for water, but they are never involved in how a decision is made about the land that is given to the concessionaire. So a lot of issue. And then one of the things that is emerging also is that, land grab, land is not kind of disconnected from water. So as they grab the land, they are also grabbing the water, because we see that deforestation is going on, and as they expose the water body, the stream and rivers, they run dry, and then from the chemical application on their farm, water sources have been polluted. They are being intoxicated with different chemicals. So we see that in Liberia, we see that in Nigeria, we see that in Ghana, and most of the country, in Cameroon as well. So those are the issues. And then there is increase in sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. Obviously when people don't have job, that your kind of survival is you are in a vulnerable state. So the companies' workers are using the vulnerability of women to exploit them. Just quickly, those are some of the issues that we saw. There's a community in Ivory Coast, for example, and Yaproko, they have water issue. For example, talking about the water, where the companies, the entire water valley in a region was polluted. So the company had to bring water in gallons and to supply people. And then they had to distribute that water. And then before the people complain that before the water gets to the community, it's already contaminated. And the water is not even safe. The water was not even, the tanker that were bringing the water, they say it was not suitable. So the whole water body, people started having ish when they use the water to take their bath. So those are some of the issues. And then for me, I mean, I see it as an introduction of another form of slavery, because people who control your stomach kind of control your life. If people, our community, people land have been taken, you are taking away the power that they have, you are to produce their food, you take away their livelihood, you take away their dignity and everything. So it's a kind of slavery that is creeping gradually in West Africa, and I think this is what we really need to stand up to. But in the meantime, we need to look at how we can empower women, because I think the communities, once you give them support to kind of speak out for themselves, they are standing out, because I mean, evident by the kind of protests around the concession areas. So just not to take up your time, this is what I have to say concerning the impact of plantation on women in West Africa.
Thank you so much, Salome, for this presentation. It was short, but powerful. You went straight forward to give us the real impacts of plantations on women and households in West Africa. So it's clear that land grab and biodiversity laws, agricultural land laws, are very key impact on women, because without land, they don't have a place to do their family farming. So thank you, Salome, for bringing the impact of women in this discussion. So participant, do you have any question to Salome? And Shitira, thank you for accepting Sophie to leave. Do you have any more questions, please? I don't have any hands. Salome, your hands is up.
My hands up?
Yes.
I don't even know how.
I thought you want to ask a question.
No.
Okay, thank you very much for joining this excellent webinar on plantations. This marked the launching of the 21st of September, which will be tomorrow. And tomorrow we'll also release a statement, the working group statement. Thank you, Philip, Elvis, Shitira, and others for working on the statements. Tomorrow we'll be launching that statement. And if you look at in the chat, Philip also is inviting us to join the clubhouse for a discussion. So the link is pasted on the chat. You can click the link and you have more information about the event on the clubhouse. So tomorrow is 21st of September. 21st of September. It's the International Day of Struggle Against Monoculture Tree Plantations. The statement will be launched. So thank you once again for joining this webinar, and please continue to raise awareness on this issue for people to understand why we are fighting. Thank you for David. Thank you for Salome. Thank you for John to joining this and for your presentation. And thank you all who participated to this. Marianne, thank you. Shitira, thank you. Felicia, thank you very much. Elvis, Philip, thank you so much for joining. So Youssef, you are late. We are just finished, but thank you for joining. Next time, we're going to have another webinar for sure to discuss more of this. It's very important for us. Thank you and bye-bye. Next time.
Kwame, can you stay on where others live?
Okay.
Yeah. So Kwame, can I share the presentation with you?
Yes, please. Share the presentation with me. And we will share the record as well. Let me stop the recording.
John Baki, long time.
Salome.
Salome.
Yeah. Yeah.
How is